Exactly. Always, that's true. But this, yeah. Shana Tova. Shana Tova. Please find your seats. We're going to start in just a minute. I'm not worried. Please be seated. We're about to begin. Shana Tova. Please turn to page 204 in your Machzor, in your High Holiday Prayer Book, as we begin the Kol Nidre service. All the vows on our lips, the burdens in our hearts, the pent-up regrets about which we brooded and spoke through prayers without end on Last Atonement Day, did not change our way of life or bring deliverance in the year that has passed. From mountain peaks we fell to common ways at the close of the fast. Will you hear our regret? Will you unlock the prison and release us from the shackles of habits, accept our prayers, forgive our wrongs, though we repeat them again and again? In moments of weaknesses, we do not remember our promises. Recall that we forget. Take our heart's intent. Forgive us. Pardon us. Kol Nidre. Please rise. This one is light. Kol Nidre, page 204 and 205.
בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
By authority of the court on high and authority of the court below, with divine consent and consent of this congregation, we grant permission to pray with all of those who have transgressed. Page 205, Kol Nidre.
מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים
Kol Nidre, chant of ages, chant of Israel, chant of sorrow, measuring off the throbbing heartbeats of a people bowed in anguish, crushed by tyrants, thwarted, broken, wandering, ever homeless, weary. Generations set your motif out of trials, hopes, and yearnings, added each its variations to your theme and to your cadence. Diverse lands and diverse periods poured their soul into your music. When we hearken with our hearts tuned, we can hear the lamentations through time's corridor resounding. We can see revealed before us heroes, martyrs, saints, and scholars, loyal, steadfast children of Israel, sanctifying God. Kol Nidre, 205. Kol Nidre, chant of ages, chant of pain, and chant of pathos. Mingled with your notes of sorrow, vibrant measures trill and quiver, rising to a great crescendo with the Jews' undying spirit. As we raise aloft the Torah, symbol of our faith and vigor, notes of joyous exultation crept into your dirgeful music as with fortitude we cherished all our people held most sacred. While our hearts beat to your rhythm, stir us with new consecration to our God, to serve with all our heart and soul and fervor. Kol Nidre.
Teilin Levoltalin.
Kol Nidre, chant of ages, chant of grief, and chant of triumph, echoing this night of memories in the hearts and ears of Israel. Once again, you draw together all dispersed and all God's faithful to return and humbly seek God's suppliants for grace and pardon. In these days of woeful living, do we plead before God's mercy for strength and help and guidance. With your plaintive chant, rise our prayers to heaven ascending for surcease of human sorrow, for the dawn of peace and freedom when all hearts are purged of hatred, passions, lusts that rend asunder, then all will stand together to acknowledge God.
כגודל חסדך וכאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים לידנה לשם
Shehechianu. Please be seated. Yom Kippur is a solemn day, but that doesn't mean it is a humorless one. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but Jews sometimes like to make fun of people. And so in Eastern Europe, they chose to make fun of the people of Chelm. They decided that this was a Jewish community that was marked by foolishness, and there are all sorts of stories and jokes about the wise men of Chelm, but of course wise is used sarcastically, like the time that someone brought before the wise men of Chelm why it is that every time he drops his bread, it falls on the side with the butter. And they said, "You're clearly buttering the wrong side of your bread." That's the kind of joke that people would tell about Chelm. One of my favorites, which is not the one that I actually want to tell you, but I want to get this one in because I like it so much, and it's very clever, I think, is one of the wise men of Chelm decided he wanted to distinguish himself among all the wise men of Chelm. And he heard the Rabbi of Warsaw had a great reputation for wisdom. So he went off to the Rabbi of Warsaw and he said, "Please, tell me something that I can bring back to Chelm that will show how smart I am." So the Rabbi of Warsaw said, "I'll give you a riddle." He said, "That's great." So the Rabbi said, "Who is the son of my father, but not my brother?" He thought and thought and thought. He said, "I have no idea." And the rabbi of Warsaw said, "I am." And he said, "Oh, that's great. I love that." And he went back and he called together all the wise men of Chelm and he said, "Who is the son of my father, but not my brother?" And they thought and stroked their beards, and none of them could decide. And finally they said, "We give up." And he said, "It's obvious, the rabbi of Warsaw." So those are the kinds of stories that they used to tell about Chelm. But the reason I bring it up is because one of the stories of Chelm is that there was on the road from Chelm a very steep grade, and carriages used to constantly fall off the road and people would get injured. And so they called together all the wise men of Chelm to decide what to do. And finally they issued a proclamation. And this is what it said: "Whereas the road leading down the mountain has no guardrails, and whereas this leads many people to fall off the mountain, causing serious injury, we hereby resolve that a hospital be built at the bottom of the mountain." You laugh. But that's the whole point of Yom Kippur. The whole point of Yom Kippur is to set up guardrails so we don't need a hospital at the bottom of the mountain, is to live in such a way that we will prevent ourselves from getting into the conditions that make us come here and regret things that we have done over the year. So the truth is that sometimes we're no wiser than the wise men of Chelm. We're certainly no wiser than the people who told their stories. We rise for this evening's call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, on page 207. Please be seated. We continue silently, page 207.
El Chai v'Kayam Tamidim Lo Chaleinu Leolam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Amari V'Ravi. We continue on page 208, Ahavat Olam.
Great Israel,
continue with the recitation of the Shema in the middle of page 208.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol me'otecha, ve'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha, ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam ve'shivtecha bebeitecha uvelechtecha v'derech ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
We continue silently until the bottom of page 209.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל, לך אנו שירה
Shana Tova, everyone. As I had the opportunity to speak for a brief moment on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, I had the chance to share a little bit about our Sinai Temple Mental Health Center. Now, 1 year ago, I am so proud that we officially launched our center, a service to the Sinai Temple community, offering mental and emotional support to those in need. We are deeply grateful to the Frederick D. Rosen and Nadine Schiff Rosen Family Foundation for underwriting our center. Nadine and Fred, thank you for your partnership. This evening, our dear congregant, Sarah Albrandt, will share her own experiences with the Sinai Temple Mental Health Center. Thank you, Sarah.
Full service.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Rabbi Guzik. 2 years ago, on Rosh Hashanah, I felt an earthquake for the first time. It was around midnight. I was awake watching a movie, and I suddenly felt everything shake. It was quite unnerving. I wish I had known what was going on or had someone who could sympathetically explain what to do. My name is Sarah, and I've been a Sinai Temple member for just over a year. I heard about the Sinai Temple Mental Health Center before becoming a member from a press release. I remember thinking, what a wonderful initiative. I even emailed Rabbi Guzik to offer help with the center. I meant something like setting up chairs, not getting in front of the congregation on the holiest day of the year, and talking about a very personal experience and how the mental health center assisted me. But if I can promote the center and help reduce the stigma around the topic of mental health, then I feel it's my responsibility to speak up. I've been dealing with depression ever since I moved to Los Angeles in March of 2020, just 2 weeks before the pandemic lockdown. When I recently faced a mental health emergency, I reached out to the Sinai Temple Mental Health Center for help. The combination of mounting stress at work, moving to a new city, and lingering effects of the pandemic left me feeling hopeless and on the verge of giving up. It was like experiencing an earthquake, only I felt. But I knew it wasn't going to stop on its own. Fortunately, I recognized that I needed help before I did something impulsive and permanent, something I would regret. I first utilized the crisis text line, and they encouraged me to get to a hospital. They asked, "Do you know how to admit yourself?" That question was the catalyst that made me realize I needed more immediate assistance. I replied, "No, but I think I know someone who does." I had previously met the director of the Mental Health Center, Carolyn Hoffman, and she provided me with some good advice and resources to help with my depression. I texted back, "My synagogue has a mental health center. I've spoken with the director before. She's very nice. She would almost certainly know next steps to take and be helpful." They wrote back, "That's an amazing resource." I called Carolyn, and immediately she was both calm and direct in advising me. I honestly thought she would just give me a few pointers, and that would be it. But she stayed in communication with me through the entire process. Early on, she asked, "Do you have a way to get to the hospital? If you don't, I will come get you." That's the moment I realized I had vastly underestimated the support I would get from her and the mental health center. A trip to the ER is never pleasant, but alone and facing a mental health crisis, it's downright terrifying. I am beyond grateful that while I was there, Carolyn was texting with me as I waited, asking how I was, seeing where I was in the process. I have no family in LA, but thanks to the Sinai Temple Mental Health Center, when I needed help, I wasn't alone. I followed up with her in person afterwards, and while I never doubted it, it was clear her concern for me was genuine. Seeing that there was someone who cared about me helped. When you no longer care about yourself, when you doubt everything, even your will to live, the empathy of others is an easy thing to dismiss. But when someone is sitting in front of you and you can see the look of concern, the look of caring on their face, that helps get you back to reality. A year ago, on Rosh Hashanah, from this bima, Rabbi Wolpe said, "You are not good or bad by what you are you are good or bad by what you do. Along those lines, I would say that suffering from depression or any mental illness does not make you a bad person, nor a weak person. The decisions you make determine that, and seeking help is an act of courage and strength. I know there are healthy ways of coping, and it's on me to make good choices. And if I feel I cannot, to reach out for help. For that, the Sinai Temple Mental Health Center is an amazing resource. The stigma surrounding mental illness is real. When I was asked to speak today, I paused, but ultimately decided if I could help just one person with my story, if I could bring more attention to the mental health center and help reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness, then it'd be worth it. I am beyond grateful that when I needed assistance, the mental health center was there for me. It's my hope that soon there will be no stigma associated with mental illness and everyone can feel comfortable asking for help if needed. To Rabbi Guzik, thank you for your vision. To Carolyn, thank you for your exceptional leadership and your empathetic and non-judgmental assistance. And to the Rosens, thank you for your generosity. I hope you realize the impact the center has already had. I encourage any member who is struggling to reach out to the mental health center. We at Sinai Temple are beyond fortunate to have this resource available to us. Kamar Tov.
I know we all join together in thanking Sarah for your vulnerability and for your heart. You brought us to tears. And we pray together, as you mentioned, that your willingness to share your story and how you benefit from the center will encourage others to come forward and utilize our resources. The Mental Health Center is here. Carolyn Hoffman, our director, is here. Tonight she's actually here. And once again, we want to thank the Rosens for ensuring that this dream came into fruition. In a moment, we'll turn to page 211 for the Hashkivenu prayer, praying for a Sukkot Shlomecha, a sukkah of peace to embrace us, a prayer that reminds us and let us know that when we feel as if we are immersed in darkness, when we're part of a synagogue community, we are not alone. Page 211.
Aleinu Sukkot Shelomecha, Baruch Atah Adonai. Haporei Sukkot Shalom.
Second paragraph, page 212. כי ביום הזה.
On page 212, we are in a moment going to rise for the Chatzi Kaddish and then move on to the silent Amidah. The purpose of the silent Amidah is to not only have a chance to pray the words in Hebrew or in English, but also a rare opportunity when you are not confronted by a screen, I hope, and if you're holding it beneath the pew, put it away, or a distraction, or anything but yourself and your soul, to take some time and think about your life and think about the people whom you care about and whom you love, and what it is that you want in the year ahead, and to try to display the same kind of raw honesty and sincerity that we just saw from Sarah, but about your own life, and about your own struggles, and about your own possibilities. Please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 212. The silent Amidah follows until page 221.
יתקדש, יתקדש שמי רבב, ועולמות יברך חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון, וביום אחד, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלל בזמן קריב, וימרו ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בשירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה וימנו אמן.
213 to 221. As we hear the call of the shofar, we wake up. We renew our lives. We are reminded to become part of something greater than ourselves. Rav Kook taught us, the old shall be made new again, and the new shall be made holy. That is Sinai Temple.
Where tradition is of the essence. The words of Torah touch our souls, and the music fills our hearts.
A place where we gather for our religious, spiritual, social, and cultural desires. In these sacred walls, we care for others.
Over this last year, we have adapted to our ever-changing world. Our new Sinai Temple Mental Health Center has lifted the spirits of those in need.
We have brought together different faith communities through prayer, during the crisis in Ukraine, through service in feeding the hungry, and through recreational activities with the future of the Jewish people.
Our schools have continued to educate hundreds of children in Jewish rituals, in Jewish history, and a deep connection to the land and people of Israel. Our young professionals of Atid have gathered in numbers with sold-out Shabbat dinners as part of our Ted and Hetty Orden and Family Friday Night Live.
Sinai Temple continues to attract the greatest scholars, imparting their wisdom into our community. And the Sinai Temple Israel Center, at its core, ensures that we at Sinai Temple strengthen the unbreakable bonds between the United States and the land and the people of Israel.
We have learned from each other.
This year, be part of making Sinai sacred. Hear the blast of the shofar. It's calling you home.
Welcome, welcome,
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back home.
Welcome home to Sinai Temple!
When you've concluded your Amidah, please be seated. Even though we know that God dwells both everywhere and nowhere, because God does not get defined by space, we don't have the choice but to think in spatial terms. And religious metaphors generally go one of two ways. They either go in or they go up. That is, we talk about exploring inside our souls, and we talk about raising our prayers to heaven. During the Amidah, we talked a lot, if silently, about going inside ourselves and exploring ourselves. In the Ya'aleh prayer, we turn to the other metaphor, which is asking our prayers to rise towards heaven. So on page 223, the ark is open, and we rise for the Ya'aleh prayer.
יעלה תחנוננו מערב ויבוא שבתנו מבוקר ויראה רינוננו עד ערב יעלה קולנו מערב ויבוא צדקתנו מבוקר ויראה פדיוננו עד ערב
יעלנו
ויבוא סליחתנו מבוקר
ויראה נקתנו עד ערב יעלה מנוסנו ערב ויבוא למעלה
That was Hannah Asher joining our cantor for the beautiful rendition of Yale. And now Amanda Kogan will join Cantor Feldman on page 225 for Haneshama Lach. Again, we thank both Hannah Asher and Amanda Kogan, and we turn to page 229 for El Melech.
Melech Yoshev al Kiserach
זכור לנו היום פרי שלוש עשרה כמו שהודעת יתייצב עמו שם rise for the 13 attributes. Adonai, Adonai, El Rahum ve'Hanun, Erech Hapayim, Verot Chesed ve'emet, Notzer Chesed l'olamim, Nosei Hamon v'hafesha v'chata.
As the ark is opened, we turn to page 233. Page 233 for Shema Kolenu.
אליך השיבנו אליך ונשובה חודש ימינו
Please be seated. The world is like a postcard. That's not my analogy. It's the analogy of the Chafetz Chaim, the great 19th century rabbi, who said, when you send a postcard, what happens is at the beginning you write in big letters, wish you were here, having a great time, and then you realize you've used up most of the card and you haven't said anything significant. So you get to that little bit at the bottom and you write in very little letters all the things that really matter. He said, that's like life. You spend years and years saying things, and then as you get to the end, you realize you have to say what really matters. I'm coming to the end of the postcard. So what I want to talk to you about tonight, in kind of a reverse order, is what I believe, and then tomorrow, even more personally, the journey of how I got there. And what I want to start off with is that I believe that the world is much more than can be seen. And that if you only believe in what you can see, you are blind. And that there are wonders and there is mystery beyond the visible and beyond the material that otherwise we would not know. The poet Yeats said the world is full of magic things patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper. You may recall that Moses, when he saw the burning bush, turned aside to look, and the rabbis say, why do they say that Moses turned aside? Because the bush was always on fire since the beginning of time, but nobody saw it. But Moses looked. He paid attention. He saw beneath the material order of things to that which was greater. Think of the wonders that we know that are not material and are not physical, like mathematics. The laws of the universe that somehow are accessible to our minds, and when you begin to understand the wonder of that, the marvel and the mystery of the fact that what we see is a small fragment of what is, you understand that the real division in the world is not between the religious and the non-religious. The real division of the world is between the materialists and the non-materialists. Between those who believe there's only stuff and those who know there is so much more. Between those who see beyond, see more deeply, see behind the world. The tzafun, the hidden, like the afikomen, that is only revealed at the very end. That's the first thing that we believe, because after all, when we talk about God, we don't even know what we're talking about. I say sometimes to the teenagers, when you were 2 years old, could you imagine what a 15-year-old was like? And they say no. I say, you can't even imagine what you can't imagine. The distance between us and God, whatever God is much greater than that between a 2-year-old and a 15-year-old. So it's not between believers in God and non-believers in God. It's between those who appreciate the mystery and those who don't. And in this mysterious world, my second belief is that the Jewish tradition and the Jewish people have a special mission. Despite the fact that throughout history we were persecuted, we were hated, we were pursued, we were killed, we are still here. And there are those who will foolishly say, oh, we're here because we were hated. But I remind you that lots and lots of people were hated and persecuted throughout history. But the reason you don't think of them is because they're not here anymore. I'm always amazed at the fact that the only reason we remember the Jebusites and the Canaanites and the Hittites is because they were enemies of Israel. Can you imagine if you went back to ancient times and said to the Canaanites, you'll be remembered for thousands of years, but only because you hate that small little people? We keep coming back over and over and over and over again. Resurrection in the Jewish tradition is not a miracle, it's a habit. This is what we do. And unfortunately, some of our people and some of our children don't have this deep sense of what it is to be proud to be in the tradition of Isaiah and Ruth, of Maimonides and Dona Gracia, remarkable people who made their way in this world against tremendous odds, and understood that the Jewish story is about the story. One of the things that characterizes Jewish stories is we're not always about the ending, we're about the story. The Torah is a book that doesn't have an ending. The whole story of the Torah is about getting to the land of Israel, but when you come to the end of the 5 books, where are the Israelites? They're still in the desert. It's like the philosopher Wittgenstein, from a Jewish family, said about an artichoke. He said, you can peel away the leaves to reach the artichoke, only to discover that the leaves were what the artichoke was about all along. The Jewish story is about the story. Years ago, Shlomo Carlebach used to say when he went to college campuses, and he said this, and a student said to him, I'm a Protestant, he knew he was a Protestant. When a student said, I'm a Catholic, he knew he was a Catholic. When a student said, I'm a human being, he knew he was a Jew. Because we have not successfully instilled sometimes in ourselves the sense of this remarkable, of this astonishing, of this epical mission that we have. 4 years ago, I was in Dharamsala, and I had an audience with the Dalai Lama, and the first thing he says to me is, he points at me, he goes, what's this about the chosen people? I was polite enough not to point out to him that the reason I was there was because I was supposed to talk to his monks, to the Tibetan monks, about how to survive in the diaspora, because they were all kicked out of China, and who knows better how to survive in the diaspora than the Jewish people? Instead, I said, you know, it's true. We believe we have a special mission in this world. But that doesn't mean that other people don't have missions. Everybody gets to define their own mission for themselves. And he laughed. And he said, yeah, Tibetans think we're special too. Of course you do. And they are. But by God, so are we. So are we. It used to be when someone would convert to Judaism. I don't do this practice so much anymore, but it used to be you would have to say to them first, do you wish to join this people even though we have been despised and we have been persecuted and we have been driven from land to land? Do you still wish to join? And they would have to say, Af al pichen, even so, I will throw my lot with yours. But they had to know that it was not always a happy fate to be a Jew. And yet, we are still here. And part of the struggle of the Jewish people is to teach our children what it means to bear this tradition for thousands of years. I read something beautiful by Israel Leventhal, a rabbi who 100 years ago said, what is the meaning of the 3rd commandment up there that says you shouldn't take the Lord your God's name in vain? And he had a beautiful explanation. He said, what is the name of our people? It's Yisrael, struggles with God. He said, God's name is part of our name. And there are some people who think it doesn't matter to be part of Israel. But you can't take it in vain. We have fought so long, so hard, to get to where we are, and it has not been easy, but it has been noble. It has changed us and changed the world. And then there are other Jews. Jews who are not so universalistic that they don't care about Judaism, but Jews who are so particularistic that they don't care about the world. Like Goldfarb, who decides it's too hard and he's going to convert, so he converts. And they ask him to speak before a church group now that he is no longer Jewish, and he gets up and he says, "Fellow Goyim." Because he can only see the world through the lens of a Jew. But you have to understand, our mission was never only about Jews. A month ago, I was in Rwanda. 28 years ago, 1 in 10 Rwandans were killed. About 1 million people, 70% of the Tutsi population, 1 million people in 6 weeks. And they weren't killed by people turning them over to the authorities. No, they were clubbed in the streets, pursued into their homes. Doctors killing patients, teachers killing students. It was almost like a mass hysteria of killing all over the country. People literally clubbing children to death in the streets. And I learned the new meaning of never again. That never again is our cry to the world. Do you know how many nations have suffered terrible tragedies and the world doesn't know about it? But the Jews decided we would not keep silent about what happened to us. And I read the most famous letter to come out of the Rwandan genocide, which was a letter written by 7 pastors to the head of the church, who, by the way, ran away and did nothing, but kept the letter, which started, "We wish to inform you that tomorrow we will be killed with our families." And it ended by saying, pleading for his intervention. And the last line is, "the same way as the Jews were saved by Esther." And I thought, oh my God, thousands of years later, in East Africa, who do they turn to for a story of protection and salvation? They turn to the Jews. And I went to the Genocide Museum in Kigali. And as I walked around, the first thing that struck me was it was modeled on Yad Vashem, on the Holocaust Museum in Israel. And there is a room there, the Hall of the Children. And I walked in, and it has pictures of children, and underneath it their age, what they loved, and how they were killed. And the first child was David. He was 10 years old. He loved football and his family. And he was tortured to death. And as President Kagame said, the world stood by with its hands in its pockets. We cannot ignore the suffering of the world because we know what happened when the world ignored the suffering of the Jews. The reason that we stand with Ukraine, the reason that so many were marching on the streets for the women of Iran, is because we understand what it is to suffer. It's part of being a Jew. And if you don't understand, you betray your tradition. If you care only about Jews, you betray your tradition. And if you don't care about Jews, you betray your tradition. Primo Levi, coming out of Auschwitz, said it happened and therefore it can happen again. That's the core of what we have to say. We know it can happen. We have seen it happen, and not only in Germany in 1939 to 1945, but in different ways. In Cambodia, in Bosnia, in Rwanda. We've seen it happen. We know it can happen, and that's why we raise our voice. We cherish this world, but we are angry at the way it betrays itself. Shimon Peres once said, half-kiddingly, that the great gift of the Jews to the world was dissatisfaction. But it isn't dissatisfaction. It's indignation. It's a righteous anger at the cruelties of the world that we know all too well. When Moses first leaves the palace of Pharaoh, what is the first thing he sees? He doesn't see the pyramids. He doesn't see the civilization. It says, Vayar v'sivlotam. He sees their burdens. He sees their suffering. It's the first thing he sees, and the reason he sees it is because he's a Jew. We proclaim this to the world, and we proclaim it out loud because this is our legacy. We believe the world can be better than it is, and we will not let it rest. This synagogue stands for Jews who do both, who love the land of Israel but also travel the world, who ensure the safety of Jews but care deeply about hunger and suffering wherever it occurs, who believe in the power of our tradition but don't believe that other traditions have nothing to teach us, who recognize the resurgence of anti-Semitism and fight it with everything we can, with all of our strength, but also raise our voices against other forms of hatred that stalk our world and arise in our nation. This is a place for people who love America and love Israel and see no contradiction in those loves, but understand that those loves also embrace criticisms, because love is big enough to hold truth. And finally, what I believe is not only about the universe and about our people, but about the individual. That a soul is both a gift and an achievement. That the most important statement in the Jewish tradition, in fact, the most important statement in the history of the world, is that we are in the image of God. We didn't get to be an astonishing people by accident. It's because we believed that. And I hope we still believe it. In the Bible, God says, Vayihi or, let there be light. But then says, Na'aseh Adam, we will make the human being. So who's he talking to? To us. We make human beings together with God. God can't make a human being alone. We shape ourselves and shape our souls. We elevate our souls. That's why we're here. It is an old custom. It goes back to Talmudic times. It's not so frequently observed today, but I will tell you, if you don't know, when a child came to learn Torah, do you know where they started? They didn't start with the story of creation. They didn't start with the story of Abraham. They started with Leviticus, which is the most boring book of the Torah. It's all about sacrifices and offerings. And they started with the portion that begins, Adam ki yakriv mikem, which is usually translated as one among you who brings a sacrifice, but literally translated as one among you who brings of yourself, mikem, from you. So children learned early on that to be a human being in this world requires some self-sacrifice, some dedication, some passion, some belief about something greater than yourself, some resolution to spend your life on something that will outlast you, something more important than you, something greater than you, which in turn will make your life great. We owe a debt to life, to our ancestors who gave so much so that we could be here. Almost 40 years ago, when I first started doing high holiday services at Sinai, I put together a booklet. Hadn't seen it in a long time. It's old and yellowed. Some of you may remember we used to do readings out of this booklet when we were young. And I looked back through it the other day, and it had in it the beautiful words of the French Jewish writer Edmund Flegg, who wrote in part, "I am a Jew because in all places where there are tears and suffering, the Jew weeps. I am a Jew because in every age when the cry of despair is heard, the Jew hopes. I am a Jew because for Israel the world is not finished. Human beings must finish it." And I tell you, my friends, my deepest conviction is that this people, despised, dispersed, this people carries within it the seeds of eternity. That we will be here until the end of time, however that ends, because I really believe that being a Jew is not a fate, it's a destiny. And I am so grateful that for so many years we have shared this destiny together. Gemar Chatima Tova. We continue our service this evening with Ki Anu Amecha on page 234.
נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צפונך ואתה רוענו, אנו חרבך ואתה נוצרנו, אנו גאולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו ממירך ואתה ממירנו.
We are insolent, you are gracious and compassionate. We are obstinate, you are patient. We are sinful, you are merciful. Our days are a passing shadow, but you are the one who truly is, for time without end. Ashamnu, page 235, please rise.
Ay 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 Ashanu Ashanu Paganu Paganu Kazanu Kazanu Diparnu Dofit Diparnu Dofit Ay 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 Hevinu והרשנו, זדנו, חמסנו, טפלנו שקר, איי 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 יעצנו רע, כיזבנו, לצנו, מרדנו, ניאצנו, שררנו, אבינו, פשענו, שררנו, כישינו עורף, איי 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 רשענו, שיחתנו, תיעבנו, טעינו,
You know the mysteries of the universe, the deepest secrets, probe our innermost depths, know our thoughts and feelings. Nothing escapes you or is secret from you, therefore may it be your will, God and God of our ancestors, to forgive us for our sins, pardon us our iniquities, and grant us atonement for all our transgressions. Al Chet Shechatanu, page 237. Chet Shechatanu lefanecha, b'yonas uvratzon, Chet Shechatanu lefanecha, b'yitmutzah leva, Chet Shechatanu lefanecha, 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 Chet Shechatanu
על חית שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חית שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו וחלנו, על חית שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, ועל חית שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו וחלנו, לנו על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצלמת יד ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בתימון לבב ועל כולם אלוהים סליחות סלח לנו מחלנו
Please be seated. We continue with Rahmana on the bottom of page 242.
Rahamana deanei la'aniyei aneina aneina Rahamana deanei lemalkichei rucham aneina aneina Rahamana deanei litvirei libav aneina aneina Rahamana aneinu, Rahamana chus, aneinu, 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 Rahamana peruk, Rahamana sheziv, Rahamana rachem alav. Hashtava agala, uvizeman kariv, uvizmaz kariv. Aneina, 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 aneina.
As the ark is opened, we rise for Avinu Malkeinu, page 243.
Avinu Malkeinu chatanu lefanecha Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech ela ata Avinu Malkeinu aseh imanu leman shecha Avinu Malkeinu vadesh chayim shna tova Avinu Malkeinu vadesh Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu chachzurenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha Avinu Malkeinu shlach refuah shlema lechol amecha Avinu Malkeinu zochreinu b'zikaron tov lefanecha Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu Sefer Chaim Tovim Avinu Malkeinu Avinu Malkeinu Kotveinu Besefer Geula Vishwa Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein manu masi. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed ve'hoshienu. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed ve'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein manu masim.
Kaddish Shalem, page 245.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה למען יברא קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובמכון ובחייכו בית ישראל ועגלה בזמן קרי והימרו אמן יהי שמי רבה ומלך לעולם ולעולם ולעולם וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתלש מריקות שם ויתנו לאלה לאלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם ימה והימרו אמן תתקבל תלותו נאמר כל ישראל כל דם בון ושמע והימרו אמן ישלם הרבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל והימרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו
Amen. Aleinu, page 246.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל עמונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני כי המלכות שלך היא, ולעולמי תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
Ribbon Shel Olam, dear God, in love we remember those who no longer walk this earth. We are grateful to you for the gift of their lives, for the joys we've shared, and for the cherished memories that do not fade. We invite those in mourning and those observing a yortzeit to rise and turn to page 247 for the words of the mourner's Kaddish, page 247. Yit gadal v'yit gadash shemei Rabbah. V'alma divrach irutei v'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudishah Le'ela, le'ela, min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. May God grant comfort and healing to the hearts of all who mourn. And let us all say. Before I call upon our president, just a quick announcement about tomorrow. First of all, I would like to say, not to those of you here, but to those of you online. I remember my father telling me that he had this fantasy that on his last Yom Kippur, he was going to give the Yizkor sermon at 9 a.m. And then as people came in, he would say, you know, we did it at the proper time, and I'm sorry you're late. I'm not going to do that, but I will say that if you are a member and you have a ticket and you decided to watch it online, but you have traveled this year, then you have to come tomorrow. Because if you can get on an airplane, you can be in a sanctuary. I don't know if this is the way it says it in the Talmud, right? If you can get on an airplane, you can be in a sanctuary. So you have no excuse. Nonetheless, I will tell you, please be here at 11:30, around 11:15, 11:30, because Rabbi Sherman will be speaking about Unatan HaTokef, as you had the chance to hear Rabbi Guzik this morning. The sermon will be sometime between 12 and 12:30, I think. We never know for sure, but roughly. Sometimes Ariel likes to play an extra trill on the piano, and then it's 11:35. And also at 3:30, for those of you who want to come back after the break that we have, I'll be answering questions about my time here at Sinai, which I'm going to be talking about during the sermon. So if you're interested in a dialogue, that'll be at 3:30. Mincha will be about 4:15. Ne'ilah at 5:45, which means that the shofar will be blown at 7:30. And if you didn't get all of that, basically Ne'ilah at 5:45, and be here if you can by 11:30 tomorrow morning. Is that all correct? Yes? All right, good. Excellent. I got the thumbs up from the cantor. And with that, it is a joy and a pleasure to celebrate with you again. And I want to say a special thanks to our president, Anna Tenenblatt, who stepped in despite some initial reluctance, I must say, to take on the responsibilities of being president, and has done so with tremendous grace and style and depth, and we are very grateful to her, and here she is, Anna Tenenblatt.
Shana Tova, thank you for joining us this evening for this beautiful, beautiful service. Thank you to Rabbi Wolpe, all the rabbis in the building, of course, Cantor Feldman, Ariel Cohen, Amanda Kogan, Hannah Asher, all of the people who made everything you saw here moving around so smoothly possible, Joel Weinstein, Michael Silberstein, Tom Flesh, all the ushers, Mark Ehrman, Jacob Gershbach, sorry. All that grace, I'm blanking, I know. Please, you're welcome to join us tomorrow for a full day of fasting and praying and working on our guardrails. And I wish you all k'tiva v'chatima tova.
Once again, services begin at 9, so we'll see you then. And we conclude at 7:15 with the blowing of many, many, many shofrot. So bring a shofar if you've got one, and we will celebrate together. And with that, we conclude with Adon Olam on page 249.
Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yasir nivra lech nasa v'chertzo kol azar melech shemo nikra lech nasa v'chertzo kol azar melech shemo nikra ve'al farei kivot adol evadonim noknora lehu hayaveh ולא האוב והמצר, ונראה